All right. Peace, goodness, happiness, long life, longevity to you and your family. I'm here with Mr. Yao. Nice to meet you, sir.
Good to meet you too.
And we're in Ghana, of course, at a very, very cool location. Very, very discreet, very off grid, if I may say that. And we just kind of want to have a conversation, get to know a little bit about him. He's born in Ghana. He's all about Ghana. He knows a lot about Ghana. He has a lot of history within himself, and so I don't know if you want to do a formal introduction to the audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself, and then we go from there.
Yep, yep. Like you said, I was born in Ghana. My parents came here in 1958. As my father was a lecturer at the University of Ghana, Legon. So I was born in Achimota. Lived there for the first 14 years of my life, and then in '76, my parents decided it'll be better for me to go to the Netherlands, where my parents are from, to finish education, military service, university, work. But Ghana kept on pulling me back. So in 1996, after a couple of changes professionally, I managed to get a job in Ghana, setting up the duty-free shop and the diplomatic shops in Accra. So in '96, I came back and, well, I'm back home.
Now you're back home.
Yeah.
Back to where you started. Back to the roots.
Back to
you
the
would
roots,
say.
yes.
But I like what you're saying right there. I mean, you on. I guess you left, and then something kept pulling you back. Something kept calling you to be able to come back.
Yeah.
What would you say was that thing, or what's the when you look and you compare the differences between more developed places and I guess Ghana still being considered a third world country. What was that thing that was still pulling you, calling you to come back to a third world country?
There are too many reasons. I mean, you can make it a bit anecdotal, like Desmond Tutu said, you're not born in Africa, Africa is born in you. That's one thing. But there are so many reasons. I mean, my personal experience of my years in Europe was that I found that societally Europe was going backwards. The sense of community that I grew up with in Ghana was gone.
Yeah.
In Europe. It used to be there. My early years, I still remembered it. But as I grew older, I realized that Europe, the West, as they call it, is run by impersonal systems, by algorithms, if you like to call it. If an example is when I was in Switzerland and I had to fly back and I had to change my flight, I dialed the number, one of those service numbers. For English, press 1. Pour français, choisir le 2. Für Deutsch wählen Sie 2.
Yeah.
You're pressing buttons for 20 minutes and you don't get to speak to a human.
No human.
And so I got so frustrated, I just ended up taking a bus and a tram and going to the airport just to change my flight. And when I'm in Ghana, I know the lady who is at British Airways. I know the lady at KLM. I call them up and I say, hey, Adobe Along. Oh, Uncle Yao, how are you? I said this and this. Oh, just a minute. Tack, 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 tack. And it's done.
Yeah.
Because you know people.
Yeah.
And I find if you're having an argument with a human being, there are 3 possible outcomes. He agrees with you, you agree with him, or you agree to disagree and just have a drink together. It doesn't mean I hate you. You can agree to disagree and say, cool, we're all mature. Let's talk about something else. You could be Muslim, I could be Christian, and I say, I think you should become Christian. I mean, who am I to say what you should believe? But then a Muslim can defend the strengths of Islam, and I can be talking about the strengths of Christianity, and we can agree to stick to our beliefs, but still love each other.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
When you are in Europe and you're having a problem or an argument, it is with a system.
Not with the natural person.
You can never win an argument with a system or a machine. And you can call me old-fashioned, but I much prefer dealing with human beings and with zeros and ones in a computer.
Yeah. That's actually interesting too, because I mean, you're talking about this in the '90s, so I couldn't imagine what you would think in today's
Well,
day
right
and
right now,
age.
when I go back, because I still got family back in Europe, when I go back and you get onto a tram or a bus or whatever,
Everything's digitalized.
they're all plugged in. They're like this.
Oh
And
yeah.
when you sit down and
Oh
say
yeah.
good morning, they look at you like you're sick in the head.
And that's actually one of the things that I love so much about Ghana. Number one, I love the fact that when you're here, you see people actually walking around
Yeah.
where you can have a random
Oh
conversation.
yeah.
You say hi to different people. If you go to a local pub, you can sit at a table and somebody else will come even sit
Oh
at your
yes.
table.
Yeah.
It's nothing about no personal space
Mm.
or this or that. I think in the West, people are so privatized and like, you see an open table and maybe somebody sitting there. You'll rather go outside than go sit at the table with the person just to even have a
Yeah.
conversation or something like that. So that sense of community, that sense of togetherness, that sense of even when I was younger, we used to go outside.
Mm.
People would come to my house, ring the doorbell, ask my parents
Yeah.
if I could come outside or something like
Ring
that.
the doorbell. We didn't even use doorbells. We just walked in.
No.
Everybody knew each other. Oh, Yao, hey, come join us for dinner or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
You didn't
yeah,
even knock because
yeah.
everybody knew each other.
Yeah, it brings a sense of peace. It brings a sense of joy, and it brings this feeling that I can't really explain. It's an unmatched feeling, but that feeling is slowly being removed, I think, from the Western lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so,
And the big difference as well is, that social control that a lot of people seem to be allergic to, it worked so well in the 60s and early 70s in Ghana that if I, as a young boy, went somewhere and misbehaved in any form or fashion, the mum or the dad there
oh my
would
goodness,
reprimand me,
oh my
call
goodness,
my parents and say, Yao did this and that, and we reprimanded him. My parents would say, thank you, send him home, we'll reprimand him
in the
again.
West, that's a lawsuit.
So that social control was there, which made people behave.
Yeah, yeah,
In the 70s and 80s, when Accra really became a magnet for people from all corners of Ghana, the social control completely dissipated. Why? Because you'd have somebody from a completely different part of Ghana in Accra and suddenly realize that nobody's watching him. And nobody knows who he is. So they don't know who to call if he misbehaves because they don't know his dad or his uncle or his grandfather. So they started, hey, there's no control anymore, and they started misbehaving. That's when discipline started falling apart. That's why Accra is, chaotic. In a lot, the traffic is chaotic because there's a lack of discipline. People throwing plastic onto the street, all that kind of. That didn't happen in the 60s.
Wow.
The areas were clean. So in the West, that was compensated by the presence of police. And they kind of took over the function of social control by saying, whoa, you can't do that. Pick up that plastic bag or whatever. Here, the ratio of police to civilian is so low.
Yeah, yeah.
And on top of that, sadly, the police are not paid very well. So, I mean, I was talking to I've talked to several policemen, and there are cases where a senior policeman, not a young guy, not a rookie, a guy with a couple of bars, he was so despondent, and his daughter, 8-year-old daughter at that time, had been admitted to hospital with malaria.
Oh my goodness.
And he didn't have the money to pay for medication. So what do you expect of that man? He's going to try and find somebody who misbehaved in traffic, not to fill his pockets and build a third or a fourth or a fifth house, but to take care of his family. So you don't have enough policemen. They're underpaid. And so the checks and balances are not there. That the responsibility of social control becomes secondary to them.
So you would say that, in a nutshell, that sense of community, it takes a village, is slowly being diminished in the main city, Accra,
Yeah.
where it's like now very busy. And so I think I can understand why we find ourselves in where we are now, where it's a little bit more community. It's more like few people, so everybody should know each other around these parts.
So if you
these
go out of
areas.
the big cities and you go to the villages,
Yeah.
you are still going to find that.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's the same in the States. It's the same in the West. Where the big cities are, they've built up isolationist cells where people live. And that has decimated the sense of community because you'll have one apartment building with probably 100 different nationalities.
Yeah.
So people say, ooh,
Yeah.
that prejudice is still there.
Exactly.
And same in Accra. You've got, in 1 square mile, you've got a couple of thousand people from different corners.
Different places.
And now even from different countries, let alone from different parts.
Even more so, yeah.
So it takes a special kind of person to open up to everybody and say, hey, welcome to the neighborhood, and here's a, you see that in villages. Also in America, if you go outside of cities, you still see that in these small communities where a stranger comes, a new person comes, and you still find, people come there and say, welcome to the neighborhood, here's a cake or a bread that I baked or something like that.
Yeah, the hospitality. And I would say, I mean, even though it is changing, like you're saying, it still has not reached to the extent of the Western culture where I think it's just flat out bad, to where nobody really cares what somebody's child is doing. If somebody's still, you see examples of now, even in San Francisco, they make it to where you can go to a store, smash and grab, as long as it's below $1,000.
Yeah.
The security guards can't even do anything. They just have to allow them
No,
to
that-
walk out. But over here, you go steal something, the people around,
Oh,
they
yes.
see you still, they're
Yeah.
still going to kind of police. So it's not to the extent where it's completely gone.
No.
So I think people still have that sense of Africa, or maybe Ghana in general, still kind of has
They
that
do.
sense of,
I'll give you one example that can be verified. In the West, you've got old folks' home and nursing homes.
yeah.
You don't have them in Ghana.
Yeah.
If your grandmother is too old to take care of herself, the family is going to absorb her.
That's it.
Not only the family, the extended family. So even if, let's say, she was a successful business person or a high civil servant in Accra, they came from somewhere else. Very often they came from somewhere else. And as soon as there's something wrong with grandma, the family rallies around her and says, come back to the village. Your niece, your nephew, your
This
cousin,
person's going to watch after you.
you understand? So you're in family hands and they'll take care of you.
Yeah. It's not like nobody cares. They've left the parents to some system, and you don't know how these people are treating your parents, how the caseworkers or the nurses and things like that. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So thinking about all those things that you're saying in a nutshell, not to kind of go off and kind of get into the deep. Obviously, this kind of conversation, I feel like, is really needed, and maybe some other time we'll kind of dabble into a little bit into that. But in a nutshell, for me, thinking about these things are some of the things that places my mind to where do I want to raise my family. Obviously, education is important.
Yeah.
Health is important.
Yeah.
Safety is important. But when I think about the things that are going on in the West, I mean, we don't have to get too much into it, but even just the education system, the system of the they, he, she, them identification crisis, that's going on, starting to teach children in schools some of these things to, leave. My thing is leave the kids alone, let the kids be kids, but don't really bring it into the education system. So some of these things are the things that are going on now in the West. And so now when I think about it, I'm like, wow, maybe it might be better to move into quote unquote a third world country.
Well, I went further than that. When I lived in Europe, my ex-wife and myself categorically said, we're not having kids in Europe. And we were, the Ghana plan had not crystallized yet.
Yeah.
So we were married for 8 years, no children.
Wow.
And then the Ghana opportunity came, moved here, then we had children. I agree with you. I don't want to raise my kids in Europe.
Yeah.
And my older kids who are now in their 20s, they only moved back when they were more than 15 years old. So their moral compass had kind of been set.
Yeah.
They were grounded,
Yeah.
not in the punishment sense, but
I get you.
they had a solid foundation. And when they went to Switzerland to further their education and work, everywhere they went, they were looked at as much more mature than their age
people
mates.
in the area. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
First of all, the sense of belonging is here. Discipline is still allowed.
Yeah.
And when I say discipline, for heaven's sakes, I don't mean whipping your child and beating your child.
Exactly.
But you're allowed to say no, and no is no. And in Europe, if you say no, everybody around you will say, hey, take it easy on the kid.
Oh.
No, I'm not going to take it easy. He knows.
I have a friend, sorry to cut you.
Yeah.
I have a friend actually that they're probably going to laugh at me if they see this. His wife does not want to say no to the kids because they think that psychologically it's doing something,
A child, look, life, throughout your life, you're going to be faced with no's and yeses. Just look at the law. The law forbids us to do certain things.
Yeah.
That's a no.
Yeah.
Let the children learn those things from from the beginning.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, you've already had a candy. You can't have a second one, period. And if you throw a tantrum, that's your problem. But no is no. I mean, imagine if the cops catch you stealing somebody's car and you lay on the floor. I mean, that doesn't make sense, right? So I think you're doing a child
a disservice,
a disservice by allowing him or her to think everything is allowed.
Yeah.
They're going to get into trouble later.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have trouble with a 5-year-old than visiting my son in prison.
Thank you.
So,
thank you. Yeah.
But that is allowed here, decent discipline. Where I draw my line is any physical interaction whatsoever. If you have to use violence, physical violence, you've lost the argument. And therefore your argument was not sound. And therefore you should reflect on yourself, not on your child.
Yeah.
Number two, anytime we had to change school for the kids, my first question at any school with the best references, my first question was, is capital punishment allowed? If they said yes, I walked away. Education, schooling, for which I pay school fees, is the school's responsibility to educate my child.
Yeah.
Disciplining my child is my responsibility. I have certain values and morals that I find important, with which I shall raise my children. I'm not going to leave that to a stranger to do.
Yeah, very, very.
That stranger is entitled to their vision of morality and everything else. If they find it normal to beat their children for misbehaving, that's on them.
Yeah.
But you don't touch my child.
Yeah.
If my child misbehaves in school, you call me. I, as a parent or the mother, will go there. What happened? Find out, and then decide if the school was wrong or I was wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like you're saying, so that sense of kids growing up with that respect.
Yes.
You know, respecting elders.
Correct.
Respecting just people around them and things like that. When they go to the Western countries, they're seen a little bit more mature. They're seen a certain way because the ratio is not the same from there to here. So that's something that I think a lot of people would want to, see their kids. Now there's a divide, when talking about these things and seeing if these are things that people value in order to say they want to move to a place like Ghana, they want to move to a place maybe a little bit away from the Western culture, away from all the noise and things like that. I feel like there's a divide to where we obviously see that there's a lot of people from the diaspora moving to a place like Ghana. I mean, obviously because of the peace and because of some of these things that we've mentioned. But it seems that we see an age range of people who are much older that are beginning to move back first. Maybe some people who have retired and they're looking for a place that could be cheaper, that their social security or whatever could cover. They can live comfortably because now it's more expensive in the West. I mean, the money you're getting from your 401k is probably not going to cover much of your expenses now. And so a lot of older people are starting to move back, but I think some of the younger people are still on the fence.
Yes.
Maybe they're not fully convinced. Maybe they're not fully
informed.
Okay, yeah. There we go. Very, very good. They're not really informed. And that's kind of the conversation of what we're trying to do, trying to open up people's eyes to be able to see that, yes, there are options in a place like this. You can still be young. I mean, obviously your work and things that what you do matters for you to be able to make that decision.
Yeah.
And maybe it also doesn't matter because maybe you come here and find something new to do.
There are ample opportunities, but running a B&B, we get a huge variety of people coming to stay with us. And I've seen a lot of problems with returnees, even Ghanaians who left as a young child, worked and studied in the States, came back to face a cultural clash, let alone people who had nothing to do with Ghana, never been to Africa before, and are coming here. Now, there's a couple of things that people must know. Ghana's not for everybody. Okay? From very basic things like some people just don't like the heat, to some people can't function well in an environment that lacks rigid structure. There is structure.
System,
There is structure, but it's not rigid. It's not been defined by a system, by a machine. The human element makes structures flexible, which for me is a blessing. For other people, they can't function in that. Then there are people who have not had any orientation or information whatsoever and come here with the wrong expectations because they did not educate themselves. There's nothing wrong with Ghana, but Ghana is very different from the West on many levels, if not all levels. And therefore, I'm saying Ghana is not for everybody. You do not pack up your bags and come to Ghana without having come here first for at least a month or two as a tourist, and then do your relevant due diligence. If you're coming here to look for a job, if you're coming here to buy property, if you're coming here to invest in businesses, you don't burn all your bridges in America first. You might come here to find it totally against all what you, and then you've sold everything there, you've lost your money here, and now you're stuck. And then what you then hear is, oh, Ghana's so terrible. No, Ghana's not terrible. You were talking to the wrong people. Because in Ghana, it is not only what you know, much more importantly, who you know. So if you're talking about returnees, the structures, again, are not as in America. Landowner, land tenure here is totally different from the States. There are three different kinds of land ownership: allodial or family land, stool land, which belongs to the chief of the area, and government land. They all have different laws governing them.
I like that.
Which one are you looking at? Are you buying from a family? You don't. Are you buying from a family, the stool, or from government? Not only that, you don't come to this country and the first stranger you meet, either at the airport or the hotel you're staying, who says, "Oh, I'm an estate agent, I'll show you land."
And I think that's been to hold this conversation right here, I think that's been the mistake of a lot of people, right? They've seen people on YouTube selling land, and because they're trying to get information, they just right away start sending money. I've seen cases where people have not been to Ghana and they've sent their money to a YouTuber to get them land. You know what I mean? And who knows?
I think that naivete is very dangerous, and I always say, assume the worst, but hope for the best. If you go into any negotiation, assuming you're going to get scammed, then you know how to act.
Exactly.
I'm not saying everybody's a scammer. I'm just saying, if you're strange to this territory, assume that. That will force you to think differently. Do the due diligence. Ask people, lawyers, professional people. I mean, ask yourself this, is there an association of real estate agents in Ghana? Number one. Okay. Number two, is there an international certification, not a certification made by a local person, not even an organization, but a local person. I am hereby certified. Is there an internationally accepted certification for real estate agents? If you're part of a professional group, there's a level of protection in that. If you're a solo, independent guy, you don't have to report to anybody. You cannot be held accountable. There was a case in court recently where a lady who purported to be a church leader said, if you bring me money, I will, God will double or triple or whatever, tenfold your money. And these people brought her the money, and she went and did something else with it. Wow. None of them made any money. They took that lady, priest, to court. She won the case because they brought the money voluntarily.
Oh my goodness.
She did not coerce them. She did not demand. She just said, if you bring your money, God will bless you. Wow. And then her argument was, they were not real believers. So she won the court case and she got to keep the money.
Wow.
So in much the same way, if you're talking to an amateur who is not certified, who is not part of an international, an association of sorts, a professional organization, and you voluntarily give the money to him, I mean, there is a process.
You might not be expecting a good result, a good end
result.
And
the sad thing about that is, one person has such a negative review, and then he goes online to say, Ghana is terrible. Ghana is horrible. Ghana is bad. It's not Ghana. You've made a mistake. So there's a process they have to do, and I wish somebody would take it upon them to, are you considering to move to Ghana? In America, give them an orientation, the do's and don'ts. Do that before you come. And even after that, come for as much time as you can afford. Come and do some legwork. You might not like the heat. You might not like the smells. You might not like the sounds. There are so many things that influence your pleasure in a certain place. Determine that first. And then the process to buy land, even, you know, it's all online. Look it up first. The process is, if somebody purports to be the owner of a land, and I say purports because you don't know if he is the owner.
Unless you do the
If somebody
research.
purports, you get a so-called site plan, and you send that or you go with that to the lands department for them to do a so-called search. You pay for it, but it's a kind of insurance. The search is done to verify that the person who purports to be the owner is the same name on the site plan and is the one actually allowed to sell it. So that search is going to give you quite a bit of information. It's still no guarantee. What I always recommend people who actually ask me is get yourself a good lawyer, a recommended lawyer, either recommended by me or recommended by somebody you know and trust. Get a good lawyer. I don't mean a criminal lawyer, but a lands lawyer, a property owner, a lawyer. Have him help you. You're going to pay for that, yes, but you'd rather spend $500 or $1,000 now
before you spend 20,000 or more.
Right. So once you've done the search, there are other security measures you can put into place to protect yourself, like payment plans. You don't give all the money, you give a part of it, and then when the paperwork is ready and ready to be signed, then you pay the balance. So at least you have a little bit of security. But most importantly, do a search. I would say get a lawyer, do a search, and verify the identity of the person who says he is what he is or who he is. Then there is a level of security. A lot of people come, drop 20, 50, 100K, and then complain that
excited. Just that pure rush and that excitement without doing. I love what you're saying. I mean, you mentioned three important components of land
ownership, yeah,
and then letting the people know that they have to do due diligence.
They have to.
I mean, I think from my perspective, I first started coming back to Ghana about 5 years ago because my grandmother passed away, and so our whole family came for a funeral. Before that, I mean, I moved from Ghana at a very young age, and my father's from Kumasi, so I remember that lifestyle when I was a little bit younger in Kumasi, and growing up, getting used to the American lifestyle, I kept thinking in my mind that I had a certain vision of how Ghana is, so I didn't want nothing to do with Ghana until I came for the funeral and I see that, oh wow, Ghana has changed. You know what I mean? My dad has now built a place, in Accra, and there's comfortability here. There's so many things, and obviously coming back, kind of fell in love with some of the things we were mentioning earlier. The sense of community, seeing people just walk on the streets. To me, that alone does something to my psyche because coming from the West, where everybody's driving, if you go for a walk, people won't even bother to say hi or anything like that. Sometimes you feel depressed. You feel like you can't just walk outside and just go talk to any random person or just so many different things. And so I wanted to do something in Ghana, and thank God for me. When I started buying land, I went through an estate company that has been around for years, 10 plus years. Very reputable estate company called Cohen's Estate. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but I've had no issues. I've been able to get all my documents and everything like that for all my lands. And eventually, I actually ended up partnering with them in order to try to obviously resell lands and things like that. So I wanted to do this thing where I had friends, who maybe saw some of the journey and things like that, and they were asking, "Oh, how can we get land?" and things like that. But I never wanted to rush. It's been about 5 years since I've been buying land, and more so in the Insawam area. And eventually, I said, okay, now that I've actually have the experience of buying, making sure I've received my documents, then let me open it up for people who maybe want to come through me, or maybe just inform them in general, open up to allow people to see what Ghana is like. If they want to come and invest here, if they want to come and buy, properties, land here, or if they want to even eventually move here. I know that number one, accountability or having trust for somebody is very key because of people getting scammed. So I wanted to make sure that I did things myself first, and I was comfortable in knowing that okay, I'm safe before then offering the opportunity to other people to be able to come in and do the same thing. So that I've learned you never burn bridges. You know what I mean? In business and in doing business, you just don't know. Even if you don't agree with somebody and you at least end in a peaceful way.
Of course,
Everybody could go their separate way,
of
but you
course.
never know if you're gonna need that same person somewhere that later down the
Correct.
line, you know. And so what you're saying, due diligence is, I think, very, very important. And I love what you're saying about people should come here and visit first.
Test the waters.
At the very
Yeah.
least, you make a trip, take a trip, see if you like the
You know,
place.
you know what humans do when they come to a swimming pool for the first time? The first thing they do is put their foot. You don't jump in without testing. Is it cold? Is it hot?
Yeah.
But when they're doing something so fundamental, changing their whole life, do that toe dipping first.
Yeah.
You know,
At least to test it,
Test it.
to be able to.
and there's another very important facet a lot of people don't realize: foreigners, non-Ghanaians, cannot buy freehold land here.
Mm-hmm.
You lease it, which gives you a right of entry. You have the rights of an owner,
Yeah.
but it's only for 49 years if
Yeah.
you don't have a Ghanaian passport.
Yeah.
If you have a Ghanaian passport, it's for 99 years.
Mm.
Now, if it's a family, a family land, there are situations where you come to an agreement with the family that, okay, if you're Ghanaian, 99 years, but I'm going to pay more to extend that. So you don't have to negotiate it again in 99 years.
So touch on that a little bit, because people might be like, oh, well, then what happens after that 50 years?
If it's government land, it goes back to the government.
Mm-hmm.
If it's stool land, it goes back to the stool. When I say stool, for people who don't know what that is, the chieftaincy.
Yeah.
And if it's family land, it goes back to the family.
Mm.
It reverts to the freehold owner,
Yeah.
right? So basically land, once again, there are very few freehold lands left, and only a Ghanaian can
have
assume
access to
that.
that.
Even that, the government is limiting more and more. So the family lands that are on freehold, if not negotiated properly, the family land leases it to me for 99 years, but at the end of that, it goes to the state. So basically, the government of Ghana wants to assume ownership of all lands.
Yeah.
Very cumbersome and long project. Some people are going to refuse, especially the chiefs, because they have a spiritual connection to the land.
Yeah.
They're not giving it up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'll ever be
Change
possible.
from that, yeah.
But basically, foreigners, 49 years max. If you have a Ghanaian passport, because we know a lot of diasporans have already been given the Ghanaian passport, so they can get it for 99. But it's something you have to realize. There are a lot of countries where when you buy, you're outright owner.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist here.
So somebody that has that fear of, okay, well, at the end of that 50 years, do I just lose everything that I built there, or do
Yes,
I,
in principle, yes. But you have the first right of refusal. So what people normally do is before the 50-year term is over, they go back to the family and say, guys, I would love to stay on, can I? And then they renegotiate. If the family does want it back, then yes, you've lost it.
Yeah. So that's just to keep it simple and open for people to understand how it works over here.
The family has the right to refuse.
Yeah. But in most cases, we would say that in most cases, people are able to extend it.
Most cases, yes.
In most cases, and obviously, if you go through the right channels and all of that.
But that's why certain things you avoid, like if you're living in a 2-bedroom bungalow for the first 30 years, for those last 20 years, you're not going to now build a 15-bedroom mansion with a swimming pool. So you build something that is basically written off in those 49 years. If you then get an extension for 49, then you can decide to do something nicer or bigger. Then you have the 50-year benefit. But you don't do that in the last few years of your lease. I mean,
that's
dangerous. What people do is if they know they now have the money to build a bigger house and yada yada, they then go to the family and say, will you extend it? And then you write a contract. Then you're safe. Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to where we are now.
Yeah.
And can you explain a little bit about this area? Firstly, I mean, I'm sure we'll show some footages for the viewers to see. But we find ourselves in a very isolated place, I would say, but very greenery. A lot of greenery, I'm sorry. And just, if you guys can hear the noise, you hear the birds chirping, just sounds like peace.
It is peace.
Explain to us a little bit about how you moved. I mean, obviously, you grew up in Achimota. I mean, even when you came back to Ghana, I'm sure you didn't directly come here.
No.
You know, what was the process? Why did you decide to move to this area? How did it happen? What was your mindset? Give us a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, in the time I was a young kid growing up in Ghana, we used to go up on weekends. My parents would take me up to the Aburi Botanical Gardens. I had a very dear friend, Jerry, who now lives in the States. His parents had a house up in Mampong, which is another 20 minutes further into the mountains. They bought it in the early 70s. And I remember the first time I went there for a weekend, and I got the guest bedroom. And I got into the bedroom, and I said, in those days, you only had window air conditioning units, and there wasn't one. And Jerry's dad, my uncle Joop, Dutchman, I said, where's the air conditioner? Because the room was so chilled, right?
Yeah.
And he had a naughty twinkle in his eye, and he said, oh, it's hidden central air conditioning. There wasn't any air conditioning. It's just the mountains are so cool, you know? And so I instantaneously fell in love with the place because the temperature was right, the fresh air from all the trees. I mean, don't forget, trees are giving us free oxygen. And it's very invigorating when you get healthy oxygen, no pollution. And so that, as a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old, I knew I gotta be in this kind of environment. Anyway, fast forward several decades, and when I came back in 96, 97-ish, I started buying land in Mampong, near where Uncle Joop's house was. So, yeah, the mountains were always, where I knew. But the thing is, if you have a 9-to-5 job, it was not practical to be living here and going into Accra every day.
Of course.
So I lived in Accra and in Tema during my professional years when my work depended on being in Accra. But weekends, I mean, always come up here, relax. And so a friend of mine, giving specific history on the treehouse, a dear friend of mine and business partner who sadly passed away last year, he bought this whole 100-acre estate in 1997. His name is Herman Chinnery Hesse. Very well-known guy. He was the first software developer in Ghana.
Wow.
They used to call him the Bill Gates of West Africa. And then he would say, yeah, but without the bank account. So Herman and I worked a lot together. He did all the automation for the duty-free shop, stock management, payroll, point of sale, everything. And so we worked intensively for several months to build the program to run the duty-free. And in that, we became very good friends, and then did other projects together and spent a lot of time together. It was like, same frequency mindset.
Yeah. Like
he was an engineer, I'm an engineer, so we were always solutions oriented, We never focus on the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the problem.
Let's find a solution.
What's the solution?
Yeah.
So that kind of positivity energized me and energized him. And so weekends, I mean, Herman, anybody who knows Herman will recognize this. He was hyper spontaneous and he had a million things. He was like a juggler. There was always something going on.
Something always in the mind.
And so on, like Friday evening, say, come on, y'all, let's go up to Aburi. Even though this is not inside Aburi, he would say, we're going to Aburi. I said, dude, I'm getting ready to go to bed. Hey, there's enough time to sleep later. Come on. And he was so energetic and convincing, I'd always give up and go.
Hop along.
And so this was since 97 we've been coming here. Well, no, I lie. He bought it in 97, but it was around 2000, 2001 when the first building was up. And we'd come here just weekends, bring an icebox full of drinks and food. And then chill.
I can only imagine what it was like in those days.
Beautiful. It was like the only house. Now a lot of the neighbors have built, but it was the only house. I mean, the road was so bad.
Oh my goodness.
Generally, if you came up here, plan for a flat tire because it would happen. And I mean, it's happened before, like 11 p.m. and then flat tire, then go and find a galvanized. But then we'd come up here and literally, I mean, would sit, talk, and it was always a magnet for people from every corner of the world. The round table that we were sitting at upstairs, we used to call it the UN. There were people from
some crazy conversations have
fantastic.
There.
We had everybody from Congo, Kenya, Namibia, America, Europe, Russia, Vietnam, name it, they were there. And the conversation was always wildly interesting because Herman and I both share one thing. We cannot get offended. It's impossible to offend us. Even insults just go off my back like, It's your problem. It's not mine.
Why waste the time on that
So
negative energy?
exactly. So we really pushed free and open talk. If the talk was about racism, talk. I mean, he was black Ghanaian. I'm white, Dutch Ghanaian. Nothing can offend us. So initially, people will be a bit hesitant, trying to be politically correct, and we abhor that. We want honesty. Spill your beans.
Freedom, yeah.
Because if you spill your beans, if you tell us what is hurting you, what is upsetting you, what is annoying you, we might be able to give it context.
Come on.
And then you say, oh gosh, now I get it.
Why.
So I'll give you an example. Foreigners who come here, they complain all the time about our lack of appreciation for timing. If you have an appointment at 9 o'clock, you'll be lucky if the guy gets there before 11.
Yeah.
You know?
I had to learn that the hard way.
And then people complain about that. Why can't we be on time yet? And they're angry. They're eating themselves up. I said, you are focusing on the symptom. Their tardiness is a symptom. Now think about why they are tardy. Not that they are tardy. Why are they tardy? Let me give you a comparison. You got a headache. Why did you have a headache? Okay, if you drank too much alcohol the night before, you know why you have a headache. It's called a hangover. But if you're getting unexplained headaches, they'll give you an aspirin or Panadol or whatever it is for your headache. What caused it? Could be a lower back situation. It could be stress over here. Find out what it is. Work on the cure. You won't get a headache again. Tardiness is exactly the same. You're focusing on the headache. What caused it? This is my opinion, based on all my years here. Number one, Ghana's never had a winter. We don't have to plan ahead. There's food hanging in the trees every day of the year.
Wow.
So why stress? Do you understand? When you're in Europe, 3, 4, maybe 5 months of the year, there's no food. If you don't plan, I'm talking about way back, caveman days.
Yeah, of course.
We emigrated, the human race emigrated from here.
Yeah.
And
anthropology says so, yeah.
Yes, let's assume that theory is correct.
Yeah.
Of course, they faced the Neanderthals when they came, but that's a whole different line of discussion. They came there and they were happily walking, and oh, there's an orange, oh, there's a pear, and then suddenly there were no oranges and pears anymore. And the animals that they were hunting had gone into hibernation, that they died. Said, holy moly, we've got to adjust and plan ahead. So we know that it's 3 or 4 months, so we've got to have a stockpile of food, plan, work, plant, grow, that kind of stuff.
My goodness,
we never had that here.
You're going somewhere. That's
so
crazy.
That's number one. The most obvious. We've never had a winter, so there's no stress. The food will be in the trees every day of the year. Even in Accra, which is highly developed, you still got banana trees, mango trees, those kind of, it's food. Secondly, and that is much deeper and not as obvious, people don't realize, outsiders don't realize, every single Ghanaian I know, from taxi driver, street sweeper, policeman, yada, da, 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 every single one I know is a landlord. Listen, ask anybody in Ghana, do you own land? Not in Accra. He's got land in his village. He's a landlord, okay? Now, we have to put it into context, but he's a landlord, we know. Number two, the poorest of the poor in the village live off $2 a day. People might say, that's not enough. Wait, let me land. They live off $2 a day. This is statistically proven. They have zero debt. They don't pay taxes. And they own land.
Boss. The true boss.
Now, the difference between you and me and all the upper class Ghanaians is it, but I can't live off $2 a day. So no. Let's imagine your position. If you got 10 properties in Accra, renting for $2,000 each, and you're making $20,000 a month, free and clear, would you or would you not be stressed? So then I won't be stressed. So your 20,000 is his $2. Do you know what? I envy him. I wish I could be happy with $2 a day.
Free.
Do you understand?
Free.
Now you've got those two aspects, no winter, and you're a landlord with a landlord mentality. You are the peasant waiting for him, and you're complaining he's late.
Wow, I love this. Do
you understand?
Yeah.
So once you can put that into perspective, you will not stress yourself. I got that perspective decades ago.
Crazy. That is crazy.
So I go to a ministry or this or that, and they say, the minister will see you at 2. I've got a big Tom Clancy book with me. I'll sit in the reception area and be reading my book. You think I'm going to get stressed?
You're
I've opened my afternoon. I'm not going. I don't have any other appointments. I'm reading my book. And the funny thing is, I'm like the only white guy who never gets upset. And the secretaries, you can hear them because I do catch a couple of words of Chui and Ga.
Yeah.
I hear them when they, hey, minister or honorable, the Roni, the white man is still here. At 4 p.m. I'll still be reading my book.
He's not leaving.
No, but I've gone and waited for nothing 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 days. But I keep coming back because I know I need to see him.
Yeah.
And I have shown resilience, patience, and persistence.
Wow.
And now suddenly the respect turns around. Now they appreciate, okay, this guy's committed.
I love that.
You're standing in his office complaining and swearing and cussing and getting blood pressure. They don't care.
You'll die before you get your appointment.
Exactly. So when in Rome, do as the Romans. You have decided to come to Ghana and you don't want to adapt. It's like going in your t-shirt and your shorts to the North Pole and then complain it's cold. Go prepared, right?
Yeah.
That's my point. I really dislike it when people come here because of their lack of preparation. They ostracize Ghana, just complain, say Ghana's terrible. It's not terrible. It's just different.
Yeah. Wow, that is an interesting. I've never thought about it in that way, but you're right. Everybody in Ghana has this sense of a boss attitude
without being arrogant.
Yeah.
They're comfortable.
Yeah, so they don't rush to do anything for you because guess what? At the end of the day, they're gonna live their simple life. They're comfortable.
Yep.
It's you that's in the rush.
Yes.
It's you that's in the rush, not them.
Exactly.
And that's crazy. And wow, I mean, I can't even really. you blew my mind with this analogy. I'm not gonna lie. It's very, very good. It's very, very good. I never thought about it like that. But you're actually absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's mentality. Sometimes when I first started coming, I used to get frustrated. I said, man, it seems like you're coming to spend money, but you have to convince the person that you're spending money with to even allow you to spend your money.
Yeah.
But when you put it in that perspective where everybody's laid back, they're not really in a rush to do anything. So you also have to adjust to that same.
But we also have to get rid of our perception of superiority, right? A lot of people come here in the wrong assumption that they are superior to the local Ghanaians because they went to Yale or Harvard or this or that.
Just
don't.
Because you're coming from the West.
So let me give you an example. If you're in the States, and I don't want to mention Trump, but you have an appointment with Barack Obama, and he's 2 hours late, are you going to complain?
Oh, definitely not.
Now, you're in Ghana, and your taxi driver is Barack Obama. In his mind, he could be a chief of his village, he could be a royalty, he could be anything.
Yeah.
And you are the one who wants something from him. So what right have you got to be upset? It's like you, like I said, have an appointment with Barack Obama, and you say, dude, you're 2 hours late. Nobody will say that.
You better not.
Exactly. So why do we have that arrogant disposition when we come here that what makes you think, oh, but he's just a taxi driver, or I'm not even talking about ministers. They're visitors who come here and are annoyed at the minister for being late.
Yeah. It's a different place, like you're saying. It's a different place. But bringing it back to the specific location again that we're at.
We veered off.
And that's how, I'm saying, talking to Yao, even before we started filming, conversations could go anywhere. He has so much in-depth history. He has so much knowledge, and I love it. I think we're gonna have to do a couple of different.
Next time you're gonna have to pay.
No problem. I love this. No problem. I don't even think any amount of money really could buy this, to be honest with you. But so eventually, your friend, your good friend, you guys ended up coming into this area, and eventually you made you started to make a transition to where you said, okay, I'm gonna come and develop something.
Well, it was the other way around. So we came here weekends for years.
Okay.
And in 2015-ish, 2016, Herman had already moved to Sierra Leone.
Okay.
He grew up in Sierra Leone because his mother was head of the UN there in the 70s.
Okay.
And he really loves Sierra Leone. His wife was even Sierra Leonean,
Okay.
but he had moved there, had business interests there, kept coming back to Ghana. But I remember we had a separate meeting about something else in Accra, and we'd finished that meeting. And he said, yeah, what are we going to do about Aburi? Because it was, due to lack of use, was getting run down. And Airbnb had just started in Ghana. So I said, why don't you Airbnb it? And Herman said, well, that's no good unless there's a really good host there. And suddenly the coin dropped. I said, I can do that. And he says, what, you'd move to Aburi? I said, hell, of course. This is sweet. I love it. It's like coming back home. This is Accra in the 60s and 70s with all the trees and no walls between the houses, and people know each other. Herman really wanted to recreate that sense of community that we grew up with, that you know each other. Oh, my sugar's finished. Oh, let's just walk over.
My goodness. My goodness.
And I mean, we are so close here that even if the owner of the house is not there and I call him,
you could go into his house.
Do you mind? I need some sugar. He says, oh, why are you calling me? Go.
That's lovely, man.
Yeah.
That is lovely.
Because we all know each other.
Wow.
It's like we were in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And it's like he's offended. Why are you asking me? Don't be silly. Go.
Go. Oh, my
And
goodness.
vice versa, if he needs something. Anyway, so that's what he wanted to recreate. So he bought the 100 acres in 97 and cut it up into big plots of 150 by 150 feet. That's 0.6 of an acre, roughly, so that everybody has enough space and privacy, but still connections to the neighbors. And so this place was getting run down, and he said, I said, I'll move up. He says, wow, you didn't expect that. But I didn't have a 9-to-5 job anymore. I'm a business development consultant, and I restructure companies for other people that are struggling, especially foreign companies, with the cultural difference, managing, not being able to manage that. Anyway, so I'm a freelancer, so it was easy. Once I have internet and a telephone, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
So we came to an agreement. I live in his house because he doesn't need it. And the red building, which was Treehouse 1, was in construction. But the contractor had disappointed Herman and absconded with some money, all those usual problems, because he wasn't in the country. So we made a quick arrangement, and I would finish the construction of that and open that as the first Airbnb. And so that went well. In 2016, we completed it. In 2017, we opened, and we were super host and guest favorite with Airbnb from year one.
Rest is history, huh?
So then in 2020, Herman was here, and Sierra Leone, the Freetown airport shut down first because of COVID.
Yeah.
Accra was still open, and it was instantaneous. It was not like tomorrow we will. So he wanted to fly back and he couldn't because Sierra Leone went on lockdown. So he was stuck here for 9 months.
Wow.
And Herman cannot be stuck anywhere for 9 months. I told you about his hyperactive.
Yeah, you always got to be doing something.
So always, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And then suddenly he decided we're going to build Treehouse 2, the new building that is behind us.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's 4 studio apartments for short as well as long-term lease or rent. Treehouse 1 is really for people that just want to do nothing and relax for a weekend. We cook for them, and they don't have any amenities. I mean, there's a small kitchen upstairs, but the rooms are just bedrooms with a balcony, just to sleep,
Simple
chill,
life,
read, switch off.
Life.
And then the apartments have a kitchenette and a microwave, so people want to stay longer. They'll be more comfortable there. And so basically, out of boredom, because Eastern region didn't have lockdown, Accra did. So we built that in 1 year.
Wow.
And then Herman still had some spare cash. He said, let's do Treehouse 3 as well.
Wow.
So this one was raised at the same time.
Wow. So beautiful. I mean, it's such a beautiful place. You guys would definitely see the landscaping and everything. It's a lovely place. I wanted to ask, so what do you think is the difference between, development or acquiring lands in those days in the 90s compared to as, it is today?
Very similar, but very different. So in the 90s, buying land in Accra was as hazardous as buying land in Aburi is today.
Okay.
Because people are seeing the values shoot up, and that attracts all the the crooks.
So would you say that even in the 90s, there was still a lot of people coming in to try to really acquire a lot of land?
Not as much as now.
Okay.
But there were still people who wanted
Yeah.
to buy. But Accra was then the hotspot. People were not even looking at Aburi. So Aburi, you could buy it for a couple of $1,000s, and people were happy to get that.
Yeah.
Now it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000.
Exactly.
And so the people who don't even own the land are trying to catch a piece of that cake by selling land that doesn't even belong to them, because they know the boss maybe lives in England or America.
Yeah.
So they fake documents, pretend to be the owner and all that. But the same thing happened in Accra. Same thing. But now Accra is pretty much nailed down. But you're still going to have people that there's an empty plot somewhere in Airport Residential, and somebody will say, oh, $1 million. Yeah. So, and people have sadly destroyed Accra. It's not as livable as it was then. So the trees cut down, and the nice big yards are now full of apartment buildings. It's getting hotter. It's much more dusty because all the trees are being cut down.
Yeah.
And so the very same people are now trying to seek refuge here. And sadly, I can hear a chainsaw in the background. They're bringing their pollution here. And so in this 100-acre estate, in the deed of lease, as well as the Homeowners Association regulations, trees are not allowed to be cut.
Very good.
You,
very good.
Your plots are 150 feet by 150 feet for a reason. Your privacy, as I mentioned before, but also to give you space, to allow you space to move your house away from the trees. So you don't cut down trees.
You see, one thing I love about what you're saying is that you guys have a plan for this area, for this place. And I find it to be some way because, you see the structure in Accra, or even in different areas, when people go to buy lands from whether it's individuals or the chiefs or, whatever the different avenues they take, it seems so unstructured. Like, they're anybody's building anywhere, anybody's cutting this tree down, anybody's doing, and there's not even really a structured layout sometimes of the place.
Actually, the laws in Ghana are some of the best described laws, if not in the whole world, definitely in Africa. The Constitution was so well written.
The English is English.
Not only that, my dearly departed friend Herman, his father was part of the team that wrote the Ghana Constitution.
Wow.
And he was so good at it, Sierra Leone hired him to do theirs, and then Uganda did, to write the Constitution. He's a constitutional lawyer. And I know from lawyers, the Ghana law books are actually fantastic. What is lacking is the enforcement. There are regulations for everything. Town planning, building permits.
Where the road should go and everything.
Everything is there. But it's not being enforced.
It's not being, and that's why I think on that, after Peduase interchange, when you're going towards Nsawam, when they began to do the road over there, that major road from Accra to Kumasi, they had to break down a lot of buildings because they were built on somewhere where there should be a road access and things like that. So I go back to kind of wanted to, ask you a little, or maybe also to inform people. Sometimes maybe it's good to buy from people who have a general plan for an acquired certain amount of acres that they own, and they have a good structure of a plan for it, because then if you buy into spaces like that, you know that there's going to be structure within.
So there are places where you can buy so-called serviced plots, where a company has bought hundreds of acres, have planned it, have put in the main services, roads, water, electricity, and then you buy a plot within that. And they have a master plan they can show you, and then you have a lower income, middle income, high income, all that kind of stuff. Those organizations exist, but you're going to be paying a surcharge. So a lot of people don't see the benefit of that and don't put value to it, and they say, no, I'd rather go to a green field and do it myself, and that's where they get burned. You can also go to an estate developer. There are estate developers who sell off-plan, which makes it cheaper. You have to make sure it's an established one with a record. Not that some startup takes your money and goes. But there are big companies here, DevTraco, Clifton Homes, Trasaco, there are plenty. None of them are cheap, by the way, because they're in Accra. But still, from $300,000 or $400,000, you can have something. That goes up to way past $1 million. But there, if you're in time and they have the master plan, you can buy off plan
before the major development or before the.
So they use your money to
be able to develop.
Right. And I mean, I know some of them that are sold out within an hour of saying that they're going to develop this and it will be ready in 3 or 4 years.
Oh my goodness.
People drop the money, take my money.
Oh my goodness.
Because they know it's 25-30% cheaper than the finished product.
Yeah.
So,
I would say I see a lot of a similar thing happening in Dubai, where there's crazy amount of development happening.
yes,
There's a lot of those plans where you buy
correct.
pre.
So you pay 25% down, and then after this
You get
timeline,
payment.
25,
Yeah,
25,
exactly.
25. Yeah, exactly.
What were for you guys over here though? What were some of the challenges? Obviously, you guys had to bring electricity here.
Yeah.
You had to develop a road that
Yeah.
leads into the community and things like that. What are some of the things that you found to be very challenging? Come into a place like this where you're really literally in the mountains.
Mhm.
You have to kind of pave your own way.
Yeah.
You know?
So first of all, in our network, I mean Herman's network and my network, we know enough people in the relative professions.
Yeah.
So the first was a surveyor who's been with us since the beginning, is still with us. So he looked at the whole, okay, you've got this piece of land and that piece of land. There were 2 indentures, put them together. Okay, so if we do it like this, then that's where the main entrance should be. Then we cut a road left and right, and then we plot. So he helped in the planning of the master plan to make the plots logic and cohesive.
Yeah.
So that was part 1. Part 2 is easy. Hire a bulldozer and cut the roads with a surveyor there so that he doesn't go in the wrong direction, right? Because he's done the coordinates, he knows exactly. Okay. And of course, Herman and myself
You've been coming and
keeping an eye on things. Everybody can make a mistake. So that was part 1. So we cut the roads to have access to every plot of land, and then the plots of land were determined and pegged and surveyed and offered for sale to his friends and family. Of course, there was a deed of lease. One of the owners here is one of the top lawyers in Ghana. He's actually not a lawyer anymore. He's now a judge. So that's how good. Wow. That's how good he was.
The top of the top.
Yeah. So he wrote the deed of lease, in which we encapsulated everything. No cutting of trees, yada yada. No noise, no commercial activities, no burning of refuse, except for natural refuse, grass, that. No, plastics and all that. So very clear rules and regulations that are enforced. And then the challenge was actually getting everybody to build their properties in time, because there was a period of 10, 15 years where they did nothing.
Nobody was doing anything.
But the rules stated that you have to build within 2 years.
I think that every place that I've seen, usually they try to say
yes,
that.
There's a reason for that. So even if you've walled it, if there's no dwellable structure on your plot of land, it's no trespassing if somebody comes in to sell it or to do something else or to claim it as his. As soon as there's a dwellable structure, that can be a staff quarters, can be your own house. If there's a dwellable structure on your land, anybody who comes is trespassing, he can go straight to jail. So it's important to protect your land by building a dwellable structure, not a roofless thing, a dwellable structure, which means 4 walls, windows, doors, roof, toilet, shower. You must have that. Then you're protected. So
that's the reason behind that.
So a couple of owners actually faced that when they hadn't built over there. There was some, let's just be honest, thieves who were claiming, no, it's our land, and they were trying to sell it.
Oh my goodness.
So we had to bring the police in and everything.
Wow. Right. I want to ask you this last thing. I know we've been sitting here for some time, and I we could probably go on for hours with everything that you know and talking about. Last thing I would say is that what do you think about the value of land in Ghana? I mean, now it's really getting ridiculous in Accra and East Legon and Cantonment and some of those hot areas. Even when you come to Aburi, you can't get any, one plot of land from, in certain areas for less than $50,000 at times, sometimes $100,000. Some people will say that land in Ghana is more expensive than land in the United States, Europe, or anywhere. What do you think about how the pricing continues to rise? Do you see it capping off, or do you think it would just continue to rise and rise? And what's your personal thoughts on that?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. And if I could predict the future, I would go and buy a lottery ticket right now. It's impossible to say. I mean, the value of land is not only determined by the land, it's also determined about the economic situation in the country. If Ghana collapsed for whatever reason, the value of land is gonna forget it. But there are bubbles everywhere, right? I mean, there was a Silicon Valley bubble, there was a that bubble, there's a this. So, and location, location, location. Accra, of course, is expensive. Anything near Accra is expensive. Accra has a problem that it cannot expand to the south because that's the sea. So it can only expand in east, west, or north, right? And that takes away 50% of your growth area, right? You've got the sea at the bottom, so you can only grow. All right. So you can, I mean, yes, this is now the hot spot. But you can still buy land for a couple of $1,000s. You just go far enough away, right? It's location is everything.
So I mean, I think that's what now, you know, I try to always, my mindset was obviously everybody has their own plan. You know, if you want to come and spend that $50,000 for one plot of land and maybe develop some kind of structure that you're going to Airbnb or apartments to lease out or whatever it is, that's maybe your plan. But I kind of went with because I see that even when you come on the outskirts, the value is still, you know, I mean, within a couple of years, you buy somewhere where you might think it's a bush, and if there's development coming into that area, before you know it, that value is going to.
Listen, there's still a shortage of more than 1 million houses in Ghana, more than 1 million, and it's growing. The deficit in housing is growing by tens, if not hundreds of thousands every year. Population growth and lack of development, affordable development.
Affordable development, yeah.
So, as long as that shortage is there, the demand is going to far outstrip the supply. So, and there's no way anybody can cover that deficit within a year or 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, the total construction of houses in Ghana, I think, is still less than 5,000 units per year.
Oh, wow.
All contractors combined.
Oh, wow.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's in the thousands. It's not tens of thousands. There's no mass housing. And on top of that, unfortunately, most of the development, if not all the development, is in, you know, they say a $70,000 unit is affordable. We don't have new houses in the $20,000 range.
Oh, man. I don't know where you would find that at.
But, I mean, the technologies exist to be able to do it, but then you need certain systems in place and offtake and all that kind of stuff. But the solutions are there. It's just Ghana's not ready for them.
So maybe soon, eventually, as more people come, as different diverse groups of people come, hopefully that we'll be able to continue to grow. So one thing definitely for us to wrap it up, one thing I'm going to take away from this is that Ghana is not for everybody. And if you want to come and invest in Ghana, you should definitely come here yourself to test the waters. You got to, you know, take a trip here to Ghana, come and experience. Come to Treehouse. I'll tell you that right now. Come to Treehouse if you want peace, serene environment, and to be able to come and have a conversation with somebody that may have, I would say, almost unlimited information about Ghana's history and past and things of that nature. Definitely come and see my man Yao. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
And, he said, next time we'll be paying for for this time. Peace to everybody, and hope you guys love the details that you've gotten from this video. Until the next one, we're definitely going to come back and do some more videos with them and kind of go more in depth with the other areas. So till next time, peace.
See ya.